Welcome to That Could Have Been an Email. I'm Leslie Bailey.
And I'm Ron Shaw.
And we started this podcast to discuss the good, bad, and ugly of project managing, bring humor to our everyday project management and client situations, and a place to commiserate on all those things that our partners, friends who aren't in the industry never understand. Let's kick into it. So why are we qualified to talk about this? Between us, we have, I would say, about over 20 years of experience.
Very easily. I think I'm at 16 years alone. So
okay, that's true.
I'm old.
13, I think, is what I'm at. I kind of forget on a daily basis because it feels like it's been about 30, but we have been in this industry a long time and alongside each other from InExpo days to now working as independent contractors. So we've definitely seen some shit.
Yes. More than we'd like to report back sometimes.
Yeah. And more than we can usually share. But now that we're in kind of the safer space, we're not exactly working for organizations anymore. We wanted to give everybody a space to talk about this because your daily frustrations, I know I tell my husband, he doesn't understand them, just like I don't understand his. So it's a nice place to have all our friends, partners kind of come and be able to commiserate with us. At some points, we'll have guests from the industry who will probably debate us on some of the things we say, but This Couldn't Have Been an Email is a perfect title because everybody at one point has had that feeling.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know how many times I look at something, I'm like, but why? I mean, and I mean, I'm opinionated anyways, but I think when it comes down to it, there's just so many things where it's like, why did you just not send that? That's 2 seconds. It's almost like one of those things where you get text versus phone call as well. Like some things should just be using the right method to get there and deliver the information you need to. Normally, what's the quickest means?
Well, and if we have to have a meeting before the meeting, we're obviously not prepared for the meeting. That's always something I really get confused about is let's have a meeting before the meeting. Well, and I'm one of those people, I'm not even an introvert or anything. It's not that I don't like to talk to people or be around people. I just don't like to do it if I don't have to. If I can work through email, that's great. I don't want to be on the phone. And Ron can attest to this. I usually have kids in the background. So I definitely don't want to be on the phone. I'd rather just send me the email of what you need. I will produce it. But I think that's kind of been the mindset of an independent contractor is just send it to me and I'll do it. I don't need to have 18 meetings about this.
Yeah, I think in the same way as well. I mean, part of it, like I do understand sometimes the need for a meeting, but the meeting should normally follow up. If you can get everything concisely into an email and do that, that's the best route because not only is it recorded, it's written, people can flag it. For me, that's a huge thing. Like with emails, if I'm working through a list of things that need to be done, I flag every email that it's like, okay, and then it's a sequence. Meetings, yes, I take notes, I do that part, but it's less of a memory when it's stacked in a pile of papers or on a computer notepad somewhere. Having that email to track back what you're actually trying to do is more effective to me than on a call. Now, I understand in some cases there are how people receive and send information. Some people are just not able to compose an email. So in that case, great. But I think far too often now we've gotten to the point, and maybe this is just like where we are now, people want to hop on a call immediately. It's like, let's do a meeting. Is it really needed?
Yeah. And maybe that comes from also the COVID thing of wanting somebody to talk to, which I get that we were at home before that, or you and I were at home before that. I'll put it that way. So that's never exactly been a thing for me. Which this makes me sound super harsh, and I'm not. I'm actually very nice. It's just I don't feel the need to have that connection every day, and a lot of people do. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just when you are a contractor and you have certain hours during the day, I can't spend those on the phone because then I have to work in the evening. And as Ron and I know from our early days, I'm not working in the evenings anymore unless I absolutely have to. Because I spent too much of my young life working all the time.
Yeah,
And
I don't remember what my 20s were. I spent most of them in my early 30s working.
I mean, yeah, for the OG people at an expo, I mean, I slept on that black leather couch. Like, I'm not doing that again, as comfortable as it was. And I don't know if it's still there.
Oh no, that got moved not too long after. I think after you left, it got moved up to the Lake Forest office. So I was actually surprised one day we went up to the other office for something, and there it was sitting there, and I'm like, oh, this
and
is
there's
the best
somebody
couch
sleeping
in the
on
world.
it. Yeah.
Luckily, no, but I was the first one to sit back down on it. And like, memories.
Yeah. So it's, it's such a different, my husband actually and I were having this conversation the other night about different generations and their working styles and how much they should work. And, like we've all heard, there's been talk about millennials and younger generations being lazy, which I can attest is not the case. It's just, we don't want to, I don't live to work. And I will say my husband's the exact opposite. He loves working. He wants to work all the time. He would probably stay at his office at 9 p.m. if he could, but it's just not something that I'm looking to do. So I think if more people would kind of hop on that bandwagon of, especially with contractors, asking them how they prefer to work, because if you're only doing so many hours, it's much easier and much more efficient to get something done through an email than for you to explain to me something you could have just written out.
Right. And not to mention also, like, what happens is people set up these meetings and they're like, well, I've got something I need to review with you. And it takes maybe 5 or 10 minutes to do that. However, when they do this, they blocked 15 to 30 minutes of your time. That prevents you. And I don't know about you or how everybody else feels about this, but for me, it's very distracting when I want to get work done, but then I'm scattered with these 15 to 30 minute meetings and then like maybe a 10-minute block. I can't get myself back on track to really dig in and focus where I need to actually make progress with what I have to. And when you get your whole day because it's a meeting for a meeting and, oh, we need to have another, it just throws off my entire work rhythm. I get to the point where I will look at my schedule and say, I'm not going to get anything done in between here. I cannot jump back that quickly and get into the right flow that I need to be producing quality.
Well, especially when you get those contentious meetings, right? Like the ones where there was obviously some kind of disagreement, or even in cases, some kind of argument. And even if you weren't in it, it's so awkward after because you're talking to other people about it. Nobody knows what to do. And then your entire day is just blown up by this awkward moment that you can't get away from. And then, of course, you don't get work done after that. So it's just, it's a prioritization thing for some people. And like you said, I get everybody's communication style is different. And I've even found myself being more vocal about not wanting to be in a meeting if I don't have to. And that definitely comes along with the freedom of being a contractor. I can say that if I need to, and knowing that obviously if I may not be in that one, I may not get paid for that hour, which is fine. But it's such a strange dynamic now. Cause like I said, we've got people who need that connection and, you don't want to necessarily say no, but at the same time, you're not getting anything done. So that's basically why we titled this podcast what it is, because it's sending that message out to people. Hopefully they hear it, or don't get offended that we are saying that out there.
I think one of the other things, just thinking about what you were saying there, one of the things that's really come with my growing in the professional world is learning when to say, and that it is okay to say no to meetings. I think when you're a younger professional, you kind of have that feeling like I have to accept everything. I need to be at every meeting. And then there's those who have FOMO that are just want to be there anyways because they don't want to miss something. Personally, as I've grown professionally, I've been able to start drawing that line where I can look at something and say, I really don't need to be there. I'm not going to miss anything out. I'm sure if there's updates or notes that come later, I'll get those through email or whatever channels, but it's really getting yourself comfortable and to that point where you can say, you know what, I don't need to be a part of this, and keeping your schedule kind of better under control.
That's for sure. Because I remember when I used to see my name as optional, I would still think of it as required. Now, when I see it as optional, I'm like, okay, tentative, may not come. Which I think that's probably easy for you and I to say, being seasoned in our careers. That's an easy thing to say because, like we said, in our younger ones, we went to every single meeting, even if it had nothing to do with our project, because I didn't want to miss anything, or I didn't want it to seem like I was ditching a meeting. I didn't care. But now it's just, it comes with that growth and that knowledge of like, it's going to be okay. Nobody is going to fire you or
Right.
think that you're lazy if you don't come to something. It's just different priorities now, different kind of definitions of being efficient and needed, I think also comes along with that.
Yeah. And it's also, I think it's understanding the quality of your time or what you're able to do with it. Is attending this meeting going to be worthwhile compared to something, a task or project or something that you need to complete? And it's balancing that out, going, what provides the most value to myself and the organization that I'm working with or for at the time? Does it mean sitting on a call for 15 minutes, a half hour, an hour, or the project that I need to complete? What's more productive and beneficial to both parties at that time? And then really being able to balance that out. I mean, some meetings, they have to be had, but we definitely are at a point where it's meetings to have meetings to have meetings, and that's where it gets ridiculous. That redundancy that comes into play. It's, if you're having to have that many conversations before the main conversation, there's something's broken
wrong.
in the communication. Exactly, something's not going the way it should.
I used to work with somebody who said she wouldn't go to a meeting unless it had an agenda. And anytime she ever got a meeting invite that didn't have one, she would decline it. And I was so envious of like just her courage to do that, because at the time I was like, oh my gosh, you do that? I say yes to everyone. But she was right. Because what if you get in the room, you're not needed, you don't know what it's about, and you've blocked off that hour, half hour, whatever it is, and you didn't actually need to. So I was always so envious of her, just, assertiveness to do that and just be like, I'm not going to come unless you tell me what the agenda is and why I need to be there. So that's another thing too that I look for. But I mean, we're going to discuss a whole slew of those things on this podcast, just the things that we go through every day. And I mean, I don't know about you, Ron, we won't obviously name any, but we will definitely talk about client situations too, because we've been through the ringer with some and the other ones we are just in love with and love working with them. But it's nice to talk about it because, like I said, your spouse, your partner, your friends, don't know what you're talking about if they're not in the industry. I find myself having to give my husband the backstory of everything I explain. And by the time I get to the thing I wanted to vent about, it doesn't even matter anymore because he's already asked me 20 questions about the other details I included. So it's nice to be able to have that community of people to talk to. Because, you can, who knows who they can trust, who they work with when you say something about a client or a certain situation. I think we've all also had that happen before, that something came back to us that we said, and it's awkward. And you can't really say you didn't say
much.
it.
Yeah. And then, you run into those situations as well, where we're talking about the younger employees or even some seasoned employees will do this where they just invite everybody. So to the point of having an agenda, that is why it is critical. Like, I don't know how often I've seen invites come across and it's cryptic, the name of the meeting. You're like, well, what the hell is this about? There's no agenda. The title is something like meeting at 4. Like, it's just, there's nothing specific to like, okay, but why am I in this? And what are we supposed to be talking about? Personally, I like to actually sit down if there's something, especially if I need to present or talk. I want to know what it is in advance so I can at least get my thoughts collected. I mean, I like to actually have an understanding of like, okay, what's the flow? If there's an agenda that allows you to actually sit there and think about what are these points? Is there anything specific that I'm offering in this?
Yeah.
And then go forward and actually have a better meeting. I think poor meetings are when it's just a meeting that's scheduled and you really have no idea of what's coming up in there. The person who scheduled it, they know what they want to talk about, but they're not affording the rest of the people they invited that opportunity to really come with valuable input.
Oh yeah. If I get that cryptic subject line and it's at 8 a.m. or 4, I'm not coming. There's no way. Like, you're going to have to chase me down to find me. Because if it's either early in the morning or later in the afternoon, and this is just me, I won't speak for everybody. That's like a trigger for me. I'm like, no. Mm-mm.
Yeah. See, like when I get those, no matter what, especially even younger in career now, less now because of the private contracting. But when I would see those, and it's like a random, just like meeting with XYZ person, automatically my brain would go right to the point of going, uh-oh, is that a termination? Is that a reprimand? Because especially when they're either right at the beginning of the day or right at the end of the day, it's like, what's going on here? Or if they schedule it for like a week out and it's cryptic, you're like, what's going on? I got to a point where I would just send a message back like, what's this for? Please provide a little bit more information about what you would like to discuss on this call.
Well, the best is then when you team or Slack that person and they're like, oh, we'll just wait till the meeting. No.
Yeah, no, that doesn't work. Like you at this point, you've set off my personal anxiety. So now you need to answer a few questions so I can at least have an understanding of what's there. And hint, hint, folks.
Yeah, it's usually not good.
When you get those, it's kind of like, uh-oh. And I definitely have to go back and explain to people before. I'm like, you understand when you send something like that, it's not clear, right? Yes. It's like, typically these are the type of not happy conversations that happen. Even if that isn't your intent, where and how you schedule it, it can create that feeling for people.
Especially if it's scheduled for 15 minutes, then you really know it's not the good kind. Let's put it that way. You're either getting less work or more work. There's only two options.
In a regular organization, when you see HR on there, that's a giveaway.
Yeah, that's a hard lesson to learn and look into. So, public service announcement. If you see one of those, it's not good for you or it's not good for somebody on there. But it's so interesting that we now look at those things like that, because I will say it's happened to me before and I didn't even think about it. And I was like, oh, okay, great. I thought about it when I got in the room. That's for sure. But it's easier now to say and to be more comfortable and cavalier about it. Just because in my 20s, I'll be honest, I was living paycheck to paycheck. So like a lot of 20 somethings. So it was a bigger deal. Whereas now it's a little bit different, obviously, for certain reasons. And it's easier to go with the flow. I don't know if you remember, but affectionately, one of our friends had a nickname for me, which was Stressly, because that's all I ever did was stress out about anything I ever got. I'm happy to say I overcame that nickname. So it's easier in your career now to give advice on that and kind of mentor people that, I think the best advice I got from a fellow named Nick Gates was, if you don't send that email, no one's going to die. And he was right. Nobody's going to suffer any kind of bodily or psychological harm if I don't send an email at 10 p.m. So it's nice to be able to now look back on that and realize, yes, in the moment we were completely stressed about it, but now it's not, it doesn't affect your life.
No. I mean, I think part of what you learn to avoid that stress component from it is the planning ahead. And I think having the experience of watching that happen to others and happen to us as we've gone through, you kind of like, okay, I need to make sure I have a plan. In your 20s, you're not like right out of college, not thinking about that as much. You're like, I'm working and I'm going out and having fun afterwards. Bills are paid. Great.
Yeah.
But then you start looking, like when you see something like that, like I think I saw my first kind of process with that, like in my mid-20s was the first time. And after that, I was like, okay, I need to keep an eye on this. And then as I've gotten older, I've kind of like make sure it's building that little fallback for at least 3, maybe more months, because that in reality is the cycle of how long it takes to find something new, unless you're very well connected.
Yeah. And it's also learning to set those boundaries and precedents. 'Cause I remember building a booth for a certain client and sending it to her on a Saturday night, and her immediately answering me and asking me why a 20 something was home on a Saturday night building her booth. And it was like a light bulb went off, and I completely agreed with her as to why I would even be doing that. So it's just, I mean, let's say it gets better. I feel like we say that to high school kids too, right? But it gets better. Nobody remembers anything, but it does. I mean, it was while we had complete fun working there and working with everybody, it does get better just because you know what you're doing, you know how to prioritize and plan, even if other people don't, which is typically the case as a project manager. But and just knowing what you need to plan ahead on, it gets so much better. So I hope any young event professionals or younger project managers take that advice, because I certainly now see some advice I got that I wish I would have taken way earlier in my career.
Yeah. And the other advice, at least for our first episode, is think before you schedule that meeting. Can it actually go into an email and be more effective versus blocking time on your calendar, blocking time on other people's calendars? Like, really think about the context of what you need to say. One way I've always done it personally is, I think as I look at my own agenda when I'm going through what the meeting is if there's more than 2 or 3 questions I think are going to be asked, then I would potentially move towards a meeting. But if I think everything's clear, at least from my perspective, there may be questions, but if I think it's fairly basic and clear, then I'll just do the email. If I think there's going to be 3+ questions in there, then I'll be like, okay, this may need a meeting. Or you can do even better, you send the email out, and then if it seems like you're getting a lot of questions, you just do the easy response back. Let's have a meeting. Because at that point, then it's okay to sit and discuss, because you know that something's broken in the communication channel.
Yeah. Well, and that's like when people tell you they just want to connect, so they have a few questions for you. I ask them what their questions are, because if I get on a call with you and I don't know how to answer your questions, that's a complete waste of time. Yeah. So why would I do it? So anytime anybody tells you, which I'm guilty of this, I'll call myself out because I do it to Ron a lot. If I send a team that says, oh, do you have a few minutes? I have a question. I should be like, this is my question, instead of just asking somebody if they have 2 minutes. And to also further call myself out, when I ask you for you have 2 minutes, I mean like 20. I don't mean 2. It never is just a 2-minute thing. So I will take my own advice and put it out there about what I want to discuss, because that also, I feel like it's kind of the slick, stealthy move to send somebody a team or a Slack that's like, oh, do you just want to chat? And then it turns into an hour-long meeting, and that person doesn't even realize that they got dragged into that. But I think we're all guilty of it, especially now, where we think it's going to be a quick conversation, and then it's not going to be a quick conversation, because as we've experienced, it goes down a rabbit hole of other things about that project or industry or whatever it is. So it never ends up being just a quick conversation. So we'll take our own advice that we also give out here. I did that to somebody yesterday. I said, do you have 2 minutes? Luckily, they didn't answer me. Luckily for them, they didn't respond.
No response.
So I tried to get them again today, and it didn't work. So I obviously just need to send an email. So that's what it's all about. I mean, it's learning people's communication styles, especially I think with contractors, that's a little bit harder, because if an industry or an organization is hiring you, they probably don't have a lot of the time to learn your communication skills. So I put mine out there right away. I say, this is how I work. I'm transparent about my hours, about, as you can probably hear the background noise, what I've got going on in my work area. So I just like to put it out there that way. There is no awkwardness, and there is no strange feelings about why I can't attend a meeting at, let's say, 4:00 or 8 a.m. So I think it's better. It kind of sets it up to where they understand how you work. You understand what they want. It's kind of a push and pull thing, but it's much easier. I mean, I will totally admit I'm learning as I go, because I haven't been a contractor that long. I've always worked for an organization. So it comes with knowing what to say, knowing what not to say, especially with, you get some people who are kid people, you get some people who are not. And you learn that, and, it's a mutual respect, I think.
Yeah. And I think to your earlier point, it's about being open about your communication style. And even outside of how we do the independent contracting, within an organization, it's good to do that as well. It's good to organize teams and talk about communication styles. It's important to understand where people are at and how best to communicate with them. Granted, it can get very confusing if you have larger teams and try to remember each person's preferred communication style. But one of the things you can do from an organization standpoint with teams is have those conversations and maybe set some agreed upon standards within that work group or team of how you plan to communicate. That way there's expectations from everyone, and they can kind of hold each other accountable to be like, hey, we said this was going to be a meeting, or these types of messages we would put through Teams or Slack or something like that. But it at least sets that up so it doesn't catch people off guard.
Yeah. And I think one good point to make is, if you say your preferred communication style is email or text, you have to respond. I've seen people, say what their preference is, and then they don't respond to you on any channel. That doesn't work. You have to respond somewhere. I don't want to send, an owl or write it in the sky to get your attention. Like, if you tell me to text you and you don't answer me, I'm going to be mad. Just pick one and stick to it. So, it's a learning curve for everybody, I think, especially now. So we'll definitely probably have more stories as we get deeper into the independent contracting with other people. But it's just good to, I've asked so many questions about other contractors I know, about like, I have no idea what my rate is. I don't know how to answer that question. And I'm going to be honest, I got like a D in math my entire life. So asking me to figure out from my salaries what my rate would have been, no, I had a lot of help on doing that, because it's just not my strong point. So it's kind of just being able to kind of look at that and apply your older experiences to that. So we'll probably talk a lot about topics like that, but mostly, sharing our client stories and how to navigate situations, or how I would do it. And of course, like I said, adding that much needed, maybe sometimes dark humor to these situations.
Yes, because it is there.
It's totally there.
We've had many calls like that.
That's why so many people in our industry become like best friends with each other, because they go through it together and nobody else gets it. I think my entire friend group has at one point been, or still is, in the events industry. So, they say your teams are forged in fire. It's absolutely true. And we just hope that everybody gets, I don't know, whatever you need to get from here, whether it's advice, just some chatter, or just ideas of how to handle things in the future would be great. So I know you've set up YouTube, Ron. So where can people find us on YouTube?
So we have set up YouTube, and that could have been an email. So that is it. We made it very simple to find. Also, when we post this, I'll make sure the link's included, and we're probably going to be blasting this across social media as we launch these episodes out. Definitely recommend, once you do it, if you like the program, subscribe, like, comments, especially if you want like something for us to cover, by all means, add that in and let us know, because we are happy to have those conversations.
Yeah. Or if you want to come on and be a guest and just vent, we will definitely listen to you and commiserate right there with you. So I'm Leslie Bailey.
And I'm Ron Shaw.
And that could have been an email. See you next time.